Well, good morning, William de Yaxley. It is really lovely to be with you again. I've not been with you for what feels like quite a few weeks now. And I did an assembly with Suzanne a few weeks ago. And then Suzanne did one, I think, on harvest. And then last week I should have done an assembly for you, and I was unfortunately poorly. So I was not able to do the assembly. So it's really lovely to be able to join you in the last week of term, half term anyway. You have done so well with so many different things going on. I hope you've enjoyed being back together with your friends. And those of you that have been off for a couple of weeks isolating, well done for all that you've done to keep going in your schoolwork, and to your teachers, just fantastic, well done. So we've been talking this half term about who is Jesus. We've been thinking about who is this person that we hear about in the Bible. And we thought about the story of Jesus being born. We thought about some of the stories that involve Jesus. Some of the miracles that he was involved in, some of the things that he did. And we thought a little bit about his friends, the disciples, as well. So for this last one of this half term, I'm going to talk a little bit more about people who love Jesus and have followed Jesus. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I was away on an island. That sounds very grand and very hot, wasn't it? It's an island in England. And today's going to be a little bit more like a geography lesson to start with, an assembly, so just bear with me for a moment. And I go away to an island called the Holy Island of Lindisfarne. And what I need you to think about is where we are now in the country. We're sort of somewhere in the middle. And what I do is I get on the A1, which is just outside, and thankfully I just drive up and get on that. And I drive up the A1 for about 4.5 hours. And just before you get to Scotland, you come to a place called Berwick-upon-Tweed. And I turn right just before that, and I drive quite a few miles, about 5 miles, and I go across a causeway. Now, a causeway is something you might see if you're by the beach. A causeway is something that water will come up on, and this causeway particularly gets closed off. So this is an island that gets closed off from the mainland of Britain twice a day. So the water comes in, the tide comes over the causeway, and it gets cut off for a few hours, for about 4 or 5 hours at a time. And the people that live on this island can't get on or off during that time. The thing you also have to think about is with these tides, they're not at the same time every day. So tides change. They change the time that they come in and they come out. So the people who live on the island have to do a lot of planning and preparing as to when they can come off and on the island. So people who go to school on the island sometimes go to school in a very small class of about 2 or 3 people, and sometimes they come off the island and they join people on the mainland and go into a bigger school in a place called Lowick. So I go to this island, and it's a place that I love to go for peace and for quiet. And it's a place that lots of people visit as tourists on holiday. They go there to have a look round. Not that many stay on the island because, again, the tide times change a lot and getting on and off the island can be quite different. But I love staying on the island. And as the tide is coming in, people start to leave the island who maybe have been there visiting. I get an island all to myself. I went for a walk one day and I don't think I even saw one person because you only have the people who live on the island, which are about 150 people, so not very many. This island is really special to me. It's a place that I found a little while ago, and it's on the northeast coast. So you have to think, you get right up, you get nearly to Scotland, and then you turn across to this little island and go over there. And this island is really special to me, but it's also a really important place for Christianity, because this is the place where early Christianity really came out of. Now, I'm not thinking about Jesus' time. So if we think that Jesus was born in 0 AD, basically, and then he died in 30 AD, we're talking about 600 AD, so quite a few years later. Now, if you think about the Bible, if you think about the stories that Jesus told, we thought already about his birth, we thought about where he was born and what happened then, and we're going to think about that lots more in the next half term. But then we come to the time we remember at Easter when Jesus died. And we remember that Jesus had his special meal with his friends. We remember that he died on the cross, which is a really important Christian symbol, on Good Friday. But that's not the end of our story, because on Easter Day, Jesus rose from the grave, he rose from the dead, and we still follow Jesus today because he's alive and well, and we know that he went to be with his Father. And when he did that, he left his friends, his disciples, behind. And he said to his disciples that their job was to go and make disciples of all nations. So their job was to go out across the world and tell everybody about him. Now, I don't even know how you'd start to do that. How would you go out across the world to tell everybody about Jesus? But they did that. They started travelling, and they didn't have the means of travel that we have today. So they couldn't get on a boat in the same way for quick travel. Couldn't get on an aeroplane because it didn't exist in those times. They did go on boats, but the rides were very, very long and took a long time to get from place to place. But these disciples did what Jesus asked them to do. They were sent out, and they went to tell people all over the world, or as far as they could get, about Jesus. And so we think about our own country. If we think about how did Christianity start here, one of the ways that Christianity started here was by a group of monks or holy people, we might think of, who came over from Ireland. So I thought it's a bit of a geography lesson. We're talking about Scotland, and then we're talking about Ireland over there, and I'm talking about this little island over here, and we're somewhere down here just outside Peterborough. So these monks came over from Ireland, and they built a priory. Now, a priory is a place where monks live. You might also know it as a monastery. Now, I've got some pictures from things on Lindisfarne. It's going to be really hard for you to see these, but I'm going to give it a go. So, the bottom picture there is a picture of Lindisfarne Priory. It's now a ruin. So, it was all torn down, and all it is now is kind of the shell of the building. But they built this place where monks lived. And monks there would often be involved in rewriting the Bible. So not rewriting it and changing it, but writing it so that the Bible could go out further and further to people. So the monks would have lived there. Now, there's another place. I told you I was on an island, and there's another island off the island, which sounds very, very confusing. So one of the places I love to go to when I'm on the island is to walk down to the beach. And the beach looks over at another little island, and that's called St. Cuthbert's Island. And in the middle of that island, there is a cross. I have a photograph of that just there. I'm just trying to think, maybe did I take a photo I didn't take one looking across at the island, unfortunately. And as I look out across that island, I remember St. Cuthbert. Now, we think of lots of different saints. And the 1st of November, Sunday the 1st of November, is actually what we call in the church All Saints' Day. So we remember some really special saints who have lived and have died believing and following the Christian faith and trying to spread this further. Our own patron saint in this country is called St. George, and there are lots of patron saints and lots of other saints that do different things. But this was St. Cuthbert. And St. Cuthbert went to live on this little island, and I mean a little island. I can walk across it in about 20 seconds probably. It's surrounded by water, although when the water on the causeway that connects the island goes down, then the water also goes down around the island. So there are times when I can actually walk out to the island and sit there for a little while. And I love going out there. Now, St. Cuthbert chose to live on this island. It wouldn't be my idea of fun. I quite like having a roof over my head. I quite like having curtains to draw. I like having a bed to sleep in. But St. Cuthbert lived on this island, and he really enjoyed being by himself. And we call that solitude, where people like a life of being by themselves. And he would also be approached by people for help, or counsellors, we might think. When people had a problem or wanted to ask questions maybe about God, they would go and talk to him. Now, Cuthbert is actually buried in Durham Cathedral. Durham's a little bit further down than where I was, and it's a big city in the northeast. And St. Cuthbert is buried there. But he became a bishop a little bit later on, and St. Cuthbert was a major part of Christianity being spread in our country. I have someone else on this picture to show you. So the bottom was the priory. The top bit, which I don't actually know if you can make out that well because it's glass on glass, is St. Aidan. And St Aidan is another very important saint who also lived on Lindisfarne for a while. And he was someone else who was very important in getting the Christian message out and spreading the Christian message around. So if we're thinking about people who follow Jesus, we've got people that follow Jesus since the beginning of our AD times. So since Jesus was born, just over 2,000 years ago, people have followed him. His disciples, his friends, who then pass the message on to other people, who then pass the message on to other people. And I read the other day, the Bible has now been translated into 7,000 languages. But there are a lot more languages for it to be translated into. So some countries still don't have a Bible even today. So people have followed Jesus through the ages. They've told other people about Jesus. And these saints on this island were people that started that in England and around our country in many different ways by spreading the message. Some of them would get in boats and row down the coast and go and tell different people about Jesus and spread that message. And that's our job today as Christians still today. My job is to tell people about Jesus, to help them to get to know him and make decisions about the Bible and about who this person was for themselves. I wonder if there are people that you can think about that have helped you learn something really important. Your teachers, your parents perhaps, maybe other people, perhaps a brother or sisters taught you how to play football. There are lots of people that help us to learn. One of the things I love about the island is some of the artwork. Now that sounds a bit strange, and again, I don't know how well you can see this. There's an amazing lady who lives on the island who does beautiful artwork. And the artwork is all around Celtic knots. Now a better example is this cross that I've got, which is a Celtic Cross. I don't know if you can see it, but there are no breaks all the way through everything that's there. So everything is one. Every bit of it is one. There's no break, there's no place where it stops. I bought this new cross while I was on the island because I really love it, and it really helps me to know a bit more about Celtic knots. And again, everything is joined together. It's some rope, I think, from the harbour that's in Lindisfarne, and someone else has tied some different knots around it. And I love the Celtic knots because it helps us to think about who God is and about our faith, about what Christians believe and what Christianity is. And sometimes God gets called the Alpha and the Omega, which are Greek words for beginning and end. And the Celtic knot helps me to remember that there is no end with God. God is always there. Helps me to think about Jesus' life, which even though he went back to heaven, doesn't end. He's still there with God, our Father, and his Father. And we have the Holy Spirit with us to help us to know how to live well. And so there are so many things that I love about Lindisfarne that help me to think about being a Christian, that help me to think about who Jesus was. And when I'm there, I take lots of long walks. They have a castle on the island as well. It's the best picture I can show you of that. That's not the colour of the castle, but I love that photo of it. And in the castle, that's been there for many, many years. I've never actually managed to get into the castle, but you can walk all around the island. I love going for walks. I got to see some seals that were swimming in the North Sea around the little St Cuthbert's Island that I told you about. And it's a place that I call a thin place. And you might never have heard that expression before. But a thin place to me is a place where I can feel God very, very close to me. That it's really easy to pray. It's really easy to just rest into God's presence. And so I love going to Lindisfarne. I love spending time on there. And I bring these things back with me, and I put them all over my study. If you came into my study, you'd see things everywhere that were created or made on Lindisfarne, because it helps to remind me about who Jesus is, and that there were those amazing followers. St Aidan in that picture, St Cuthbert, and lots of other saints through the years who have followed Jesus and spoken about him. And that's still my role today, and the congregation of St Peter's in Yaxley, it's our role today as Christians to go and tell other people about Jesus as well. We're going to just spend a moment in quiet. When I go to Lindisfarne, I love sitting and looking at the sea. I can't bring you a film of that, unfortunately, because I can just film me at the moment. But I love just sitting and looking at the sea, and it helps me to think about the nature that God created and all the things that are around us. So I want you to bring to mind something that just helps you to maybe breathe deeply, something that helps just calm you and brings you peace. And then I will pray. So let's have a little bit of silence. Loving God, we thank you for Jesus, for the life that he had and shared with others, and the people that have followed that life and passed it on to others. As we think about the Bible and who Jesus was and is today, Father, help us to be people that spread the good message, the good news to people. Help us to be people who show the values that Jesus showed of looking out for others. And help us to remember the saints through the years who have shone with their love for Jesus and shared that with other people. And help us today to know you in our lives and in our school. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, I hope you have a really wonderful half term. Have a great break. And I really look forward to being with you again through video. I'm sure it will be next half term. But to be with you on video and sharing more about my faith as a Christian and more about what I do. And again, if you've got questions, then let your teachers or Mrs. Corley have them. And I will do my very best to answer them with Suzanne. And we both look forward to seeing you next half term. So take care, God bless, and have a wonderful break. Bye.